Hello and welcome back to another breaking news update. My name is Jimmy Boyd and you are watching Boyd News. I want to thank you so much for tuning in today. I've got some updates here for you regarding the Ukraine war. We've got a report to go over today that says that the U.S. may permit Ukraine to strike deeper in Russia if the front line expands. Now, this gentleman right here is James O'Brien. He's the Assistant Secretary of State for European and Eurasian Affairs, and he stated this at a House committee hearing on foreign relations. So while he was here talking about this, he was discussing the Ukraine war, and he stated that if Russia attempts to expand the front line, which they kind of already did that in the Kharkiv region, right? We were talking a lot about that, even though their offensive started to bog down in that region, from what we understand, that Russia already expanded the front line in the Kharkiv region, and then that's when uh, President Biden of the United States allowed Ukraine to start striking targets inside of Russian territory, but primarily in the Kharkiv region. Then that expanded to, well, they can strike anywhere inside of Russia, just not too deep. They didn't give an exact range or anything like that. It was just mainly near the border of Russia and Ukraine that they could prevent attacks from Russia, or if Russia's about to launch some missiles or something, they could take out these targets or air defense or whatever it might be. But they can't strike too far inside of Russia right now, as far as we know. But this gentleman here, James O'Brien, is now stating that if Russia attempts to expand the front line, they will allow Ukraine to strike much deeper inside of Russian territory. Now, we do know there was some reports that the Russians were starting to concentrate their troops around the Sumy region, which is just northwest of Kharkiv, and I haven't heard them launch any kind of offensive in that area, and maybe that could be what this is talking about, is that was a new front that was being talked about, that it may have been opened, but it hasn't been as of yet from what I've heard. But so far, I haven't seen the Russians really open up another front in any other areas except for Kharkiv, so we'll have to see if they do so. But obviously, the U.S., along with Ukraine and its allies, are expecting Russia to do this, okay, to expand the front line. Clearly, we know that Ukraine is running out of troops, and they came out, Volodymyr Zelensky, came out publicly and said that not too long ago, just within the last week, that there was many dead and wounded on the battlefield. So we know that Ukraine is very low on troops right now. So we'll have to see if Russia does this. But I want to go over this report here today and give you some more information regarding this. So let's go ahead and get right into this on Militarny. It says right here, the U.S. to increase the area of use of U.S. weapons for Ukraine if Russia expands the front line. Ukraine will be allowed to fire U.S. weapons at a greater distance into Russia if the invaders try to expand the front line. James O'Brien, Assistant Secretary of State for European and Eurasian Affairs, stated this at a House Committee on Foreign Relations hearing. According to him, Russian troops are losing their ability to advance due to Ukraine's destruction of Russian facilities near the border. We are seeing a dramatic change in Russia's ability to sustain its campaign against Ukraine because of the loss of facilities in the area where it is allowed to fire, O'Brien said. He added that the U.S. priority was to provide weapons and concentrate them in areas of greatest need. Well, I just heard a report today that the Russians were starting to push into Chasiv Yar, and I think the Ukrainians had to start pulling out of certain parts of that key city. That Chasiv Yar it's been under attack for probably almost a year now. And Ukraine's been struggling to hold on to Chasiv Yar, but there's been heavy and extreme fighting in this area. And I just heard some reports today again that Ukraine is starting to slowly pull out of that area, at least in some sections. So at first, it was the area where Russia launched its offensive near Kharkiv. And now, as Jake Sullivan said last week, if Russia tries to expand this front, Ukraine will be allowed to reach targets at a greater distance, O'Brien emphasized. Before that, the U.S. Congress once again called for lifting all restrictions on the armed forces of Ukraine and expanding the use of U.S. ATACMS long-range missiles against Russian military facilities in Russia. War criminal Russian President Vladimir Putin and his forces have calculated the exact distance to strike Ukraine from Russian territory so that Ukraine cannot retaliate. While some restrictions on Ukrainian counterattacks have been lifted, it is clearly not enough, Republican Congressman Joe Wilson noted. He added, Ukraine has to win this war. They are motivated by the struggle for existence, but victory is only possible if we let them. So this is what I've seen. Majority of Congress, they come out and state this, that they haven't put any restrictions on these weapons, okay? These weapons that have been approved for Ukraine to use, the ATACMS, HIMARS, whatever it is, they have not put any restrictions on these weapons. It was Mike Johnson, the Speaker of the House, who came out and publicly stated this. And Ukraine apparently doesn't have any restrictions on these, but the restrictions come from the Biden administration. So it's mainly Joe Biden and his cabinet that is not allowing Ukraine to use these to strike inside of Russian territory much deeper than they're able to right now. So it's really up to Joe Biden and his team to allow Ukraine to have the ability to strike further inside of Russia. And unless they give that permission, then Ukraine can no longer do that. And they're going to continue fighting again with one arm behind their back. So lawmakers who support lifting all bans on the armed forces of Ukraine emphasize that this demand is bipartisan, supported by both Republicans and Democrats. I appreciate that the co-chairman of the committee, Democrat Gregory Meeks, is in favor of retaliatory strikes, Republican Joe Wilson said during the hearing. In May, the United States changed its policy on Ukraine's strikes against Russia, but this does not apply to the ATACMS missiles. This decision is aimed at disrupting the Russian offensive in the Kharkiv region. So we'll have to see if the U.S. allows them to do this. Clearly, right now, they can't. But I've been talking about this for a long time, ever since the very moment that we heard that Ukraine could strike inside of Russian territory. This is obviously going to expand, okay? It's just going to take some time for this to happen. We also had confirmation as well coming from Patrick Ryder. He's the Pentagon's spokesperson. He came out publicly in a press conference, I think it was just yesterday, and he was telling the press that that anywhere inside of Crimea, Ukraine has the permission to strike using the U.S.-made ATACMS missiles. So they for sure can strike any side of inside of Crimea, but they just cannot strike deep inside of Russian territory yet. So obviously they can strike all these annexed regions that they want, but they cannot go into Russia as of yet. But we'll see if that will change. Most likely that will in the coming days or weeks. We'll probably see some sort of change to their policy once again, where they start allowing deeper strikes inside of Russian territory. But according to James O'Brien, he's stating here that that's only if the Russians expand the front line. So yeah, let me know what you think about this down below. Just wanted to share this information with you. If you got something out of this update, please smash that like button. And also, if you enjoy my content, please consider subscribing down below. Hit the notification bell, that way YouTube can notify you. And with that, I hope y'all have a great day. Everybody take care and God bless, and we'll see you in the next one.